All right, Martin Popoff here, back again with another edition of Reliving Old Reviews is a Useless Tool of Confusion. This is where we look at an old review of an album by a band who's legendary, album that's legendary, and see what the writer thought at the time. We know these opinions change a lot over time. It's cool to see what the consensus was at the time. It's not really consensus, it's one guy's review, right? But today we are going to be looking at Judas Priest, Ram It Down. I've got Judas Priest on the mind because you can go to martinpopoff.com and get Judas Priest album by album. It's my latest book, big coffee table book, panel book of interviewing a bunch of guys going through every studio album. And that follows up. We've got obviously the panel books I've done, the more trade paperback ones. We've got one on Thin Lizzy, Bluish Cult, two on Genesis. We've got The Cure, Robert Plant, bunch of those. martinpopoff.com for those. But yes, Judas Priest, Ram It Down. So obviously this is an album that's kind of looked down upon. It's the correction after Turbo. It's the demo version of Painkiller, whatever you want to call it, right? But let's see what Paul Miller has to say about Ram It Down. There's a caption with the picture says good, but not quite good enough. So here we go. When Judas Priest last ventured into a recording studio, the result was Turbo, an album with merits and flaws, which still elicits passionate discussion 2 years on. Turbo was Priest's attempt to do a ZZ Top style Eliminator LP. Interesting idea. It was hailed as truly innovative by some and a real cop-out by others. Me, well, having been a dedicated Priest fan for more years than I care to remember, I was torn between the two extremes. When I heard Turbo for the first time, I remember being completely appalled, almost to the point of tears, that Judas Priest could commercialize their approach and compromise their individuality to such a degree. That said, Turbo was a fine album in terms of production, execution, and strength of material, but it wasn't a Judas Priest album, and it definitely wasn't what I wanted from the band. Between then and now, JP have issued their disappointing Priest live set, Play It back-to-back with the Mighty Unleashed in the East LP, to see what I mean, and together with a lack of UK live activity, their popularity began to wane. Wow, interesting. Yeah, the UK's always on about, the bands not being there and that causing, popularity to wane. And yeah, I've oddly never really thought of comparing the two Priest live albums, but big difference. Yeah, one is the bloated second live album, and one is the amazing lightning in a bottle first live album, right? Then the rumors started. Judas Priest are working with Stock, Aitken, and Waterman. Judas Priest are making a full-bodied assault on the singles chart. Judas Priest are going to cover a Diana Ross song. Judas Priest are going to end up sounding like an unholy alliance of Status Quo and Rick Astley. Damn it, the last thing Judas Priest need right now is another point of entry, or another Turbo for that matter. This is 1988, and the band needs to be screaming for vengeance. They need to shrug their shoulders, ignore the advice and simply get on with the business of producing a Judas Priest album. So did we get one? Well, from the blood-curdling scream that heralds the beginning of the first track, Ram It Down itself, you just know this ain't going to be another Turbo. Trouble is, it's no screaming for vengeance either. First off, there's the track titles to contend with. Love Zone, Come and Get It. Phrases like that sound like they should have come from the pen of David Coverdale. Absolutely, it's one of the big problems with this album. It's very primary colored, drawn with crayons, lyrics written with crayons, whatever you want to say. It's a pretty cool album cover, but again, almost like the colors evoke what you're going to get, especially those colors. Hate those colors. Hate that blue, hate that red. And yeah, the titles, the problem with this album, it's just all about being heavy, right? So yeah, the lyrics are not very good. Instead, Halford opts for the kind of dodgy teenage rabble-rousing stuff that has dogged much of Saxon's career. Priest are becoming victims of their own press and are rapidly becoming the tacky heavy metal stereotype that so many people think they have always been. Perfect. Then there's the music on Ram It Down. As with previous Priest Plastic, the band have made the mistake of playing all their aces at once, and thus all the prime cuts on the album occur at the start of the first side. Interesting. I've never really thought about it that way. Force straight from the mold that brought us Freewheel Burning, Ram It Down. The opening track, as I say, is simply awesome. When Halford strings about 1 million guitars, you can hear every one of them. This is Priest at their most vicious. Heavy Metal is next up, announcing its arrival with some really classy Eruption-style guitar histrionics before getting down and strutting with typical cocksure arrogance. Despite the cliches, the whole thing works wonderfully well because of the sheer strength of the song. Love Zone is a little more adventurous. A heavy pounding road drill of an intro gives way to some classic realms black country riffing that edges the tune into the realm of something like Evil Fantasy. Interesting comparison. I've never really thought to compare that to Evil Fantasy. That's why I do these shows. Come and Get It is it starts off Promisingly, a strapping, colorful intro, the searing lead cutting in over the top, paving the way for a massive menacing Halford vocal, spitting out the words as if they're a disease. But the awful chorus lets it down. If you want it, come and get it. Sometimes it seems as if Priest has regressed as they've gotten older. Absolutely. This seems like a regression in terms of maturity, right? Hard as Iron finishes off the first side, driven by tremendous Dave Holland rhythm. It bursts along at a deceptive pace, but only really realizes its potential when played at maximum volume, much to my neighbor's dismay. So yeah, we haven't talked about the fact, and he hasn't noticed the fact, and this was kept very secret at the time, that this is all drum machine on this album, right? So it's an early version of that. It's an early version of trying to do drum machine and really make it sound like real drums. I mean, generally the 80s was all about, hey, look, we're doing electronic drums and aren't they cool? And we could all tell they're electronic drums, right? Side 2, whilst lacking the punch of its predecessor, is still no slouch. Blood Red Skies is somewhat reminiscent of Crimson Glory, and the whole thing sounds like an unused cut from the Turbo sessions, although the keyboards are wisely kept to a minimum. Also remember that that was going to be called Twin Turbos, and some of this material was part of, the idea of doing a double studio album at the time of Turbo, right? I'm a Rocker, yet another dreadful title, is slower, bouncier, and more Defenders of the Faith era Priest, but it's Johnny B. Good that causes eyebrows to be raised to the highest. I was aghast when I heard that Priest were dusting the cobwebs off this old chestnut, but the buggers have actually pulled it off, taking the song apart at the seams and making it very much their own. Yeah, this is a notorious, terrible story or chapter in the story of doing covers. They did this for a movie. The Johnny B. Good movie. But yeah, the interesting thing about this song is they've kept the lyrics and completely changed the music, right? Love You to Death and Monsters of Rock are the parting shots, complementing each other perfectly. The former is heavy duty revisited, true pounding drums overlaid with a sparse riff that only sputters into life in time for the chorus. The latter, meanwhile, is a typical Priest album closer. Not as trite nor as effective as Take on the World, but genuinely anthemic all the same. Ram It Down is a welcome return to form for Judas Priest, although it's still a little short on the killer we all wanted. But for all its faults, it remains the best Priest release since Screaming for Vengeance. It's out on May 9th. The choice is yours, Paul Miller. Excellent. Excellent review, Paul. You really, nailed the idea. You got into the guts of why this album was a little disappointing. I think you did a good job there. The headline says, "Ram it, damn it." So there you go. This has been Reliving Old Reviews is a useless tool of confusion. And let us know what you think. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. That like button apparently really helps. And comment. Let us know what you think of my review of this review. Join our Patreon situation. We've got merch as well. But yeah, if you get on our Patreon, Marco sends out a list of all our topics. And you can see, you can sign up for topics you know a little bit about and be on the show when we do these panel shows, which are really cool. It's my favorite part of doing the Contrarians. Actually, I get a lot of fun out of doing this as well. So there you go. Go listen to some Ram It Down.